Welcome to another episode of Heroic Hotline. We are extremely blessed to have Jeff Lockert join us from CCO headquarters in Ottawa. I believe that's where you are, isn't it, Jeff?
Yes, that's correct. I'm here in Ottawa at Catholic Christian Outreach's headquarters.
And you've been the president of that organization for some time now, haven't you?
Yes, I first joined CCO in 1999 after I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan. And I've been serving for the president as the president of CCO now for more than 2 decades.
Wow. So we've got an experienced evangelist to help us men understand how to go about doing that, because you're also part of the global 2033 movement, where calling all of us to be disciples of Christ and invite others to hear the message, the Kerygma of the gospel. So what is the Kerygma? First off, is that something that we should know?
Yeah, well, the Kerygma, is sometimes very familiar and other times not, because the Kerygma it's a Greek word, Kerygma, and it basically means the core of the gospel or the gospel. And for us, as Christians and followers of Jesus, the gospel really centers around Him. St. Paul describes the Kerygma in his letters as well, and really, it's the recognition that we were created for a relationship with God. He created us to be in communion with Him. And that through our sin, this relationship was broken, and the separation between humanity and God, that communion that existed was broken. But thanks be to God, He sent His Son Jesus to come, who was enfleshed in the incarnation, who lived, who died, and who rose again to triumph over death and sin and to restore that relationship with God. And so in Jesus and through Jesus, where He says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. So we have this great blessing, this great gift to be able to come back into relationship with God, right relationship, communion, unity, and ultimately eternal life. So the gospel is really simple. It's an invitation to be in union and communion with Jesus Christ at the center of our lives.
So do I need a master's in theology or something like that to share this with other people?
No, because we'd like to say that the gospel is really clear and simple, because Jesus came for all people, whether you're an academic or not. Whether you're a child or a very learned adult. The gospel is for all people. So in a sense, the gospel is simple, but it's not simplistic. And what I mean by that is it's simple in that, being in relationship with Jesus and inviting Jesus into our lives doesn't require a theology degree. Inviting others to consider the person of Jesus doesn't require a theology degree. The beauty of theology is that our faith is simple and it can be also extremely deep. So as we come to know Jesus more, as we come to grow in our faith and learn and deepen that faith, it's vast, and there's so many beautiful elements to our faith. Sometimes, however, we can sort of get overwhelmed by all of the beauty and depth and richness and history that we bring to the faith, and actually forget that at the core of it, at the center of it, the simplest reality of our faith is that our faith is expressed in a person, in the person of Jesus Christ. And so all of us, whether we're children or whether we're adults, can have a very beautiful, connected, intimate relationship with Jesus, and we can share that with others.
I forget where I read it, but there was this image of it's shallow enough for a mouse to wade into and deep enough for an elephant to drown, kind of thing. So there's no limit to the depth that we can go from what I've heard. I
Well,
keep
and I one of
swimming
my
down.
favorite
So
passages in the scriptures as well is, the scene where Jesus says, "Let the little children come unto me, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." And so, we're invited to have this sort of childlike faith, this love for God that we see in young children as they look upon their family and particularly upon their parents. I just became a grandfather, so we have a new grandson, Theodore, and he's only like 3 weeks old now. But even just looking at into his eyes and having him look at me, you can see this love and affection even in an infant.
that's congratulations. I've got 3 of mine visiting upstairs from Georgia. So yes, I understand the joy of being a grandfather and the challenge that we have to create an atmosphere for our young people to be invited into that mission. So that's where you've done a lot of work, especially with young men. How are they responding to the invitation?
So young men, have a particular longing in their hearts. I mean, we all have longing in our hearts, but I think especially young men have a great longing for, adventure, for significance, for purpose, for deep meaning. And CCO, began now close to 40 years ago. We started in 1988, really trying to invite young people into this great gift of faith, but also this life of adventure, the life of adventure, living, with Jesus in our lives and empowered by the Holy Spirit. So young men in particular, though, I think have an opportunity and a desire for greatness. Young men want for their lives to have meaning, have purpose, and to leave a legacy. So when we invite them into the most significant realities of life, eternal realities, spiritual realities, to live life to the fullness, both here, kind of in our material world, but also to become spiritual leaders. Uh, they're responsive. John Paul II was such a great example of this, and I have a special connection with him because he was kind of the Pope of my youth. As a young man and a young adult, and you could see in the times where he was speaking and the letters he wrote, what he would do is he would invite young people and young men to high ideals, to the highest ideals, to live lives of character, of virtue, of sacrifice. And here was a man, a pope, who also in his youth and in the years of his formative young adult life lived in a tremendously challenging time, in communist Poland, a lot of oppression, adversity, persecution. And yet his message is constant, in the face of all of that, all of what he saw, the difficulties he faced personally and within Europe and what he saw globally. He always had this tremendously strong faith in God and this call for us, for young people, to live the highest ideals. So with CCO, that's something we try to emulate, to call young men in particular and young women, but as we're talking about young men, to live and become men of greatness, of great character, of great faith, of great service, and of great witness. To stand in the gap and to share their faith with confidence, with boldness, with audacity, with a sensitivity, and I guess you could say gentleness, meekness, not weakness, strength
Hmm.
under control, and
Yeah,
with joy, ultimately with joy.
you're getting me excited again. I'm going to Poland, so I get to
Mm.
visit his birthplace and go to those places. I'm going with Jeff Cavins in September on his tour, and so I'm getting
Wow.
excited. And you're talking about something that I don't know why society drifted, well, principalities and stuff aside, that drift to try to make everything easier, like don't worry, we're not keeping score, no, where men desire to be challenged and to be great, as you say, like
Hmm.
that's it's so important, and we've robbed a generation or two of men of that, where we, oh, they're just boys, just leave them alone. Well, they're 40 years old. Like, at what
Yeah.
time do you be a man, as Father Larry's book and a series on heroic men, like, we've lost that connection to encourage men. And I know I struggle when I was in high school working with the high schools. Just, okay, they're, yes, they are technically children, but we're teaching them to adult. At what point do you teach young people to adult? And and if we want young men to be men, we need to teach them to be men and reach for more.
I heard this line once in a parenting seminar that my wife and I were attending, and it's stuck with us all throughout our kind of raising of our own family. And we've done our best, and certainly made mistakes because we're not perfect. But the speaker said, you know, as parents, you're not raising children. As parents, you're raising adults. And so if your vision of what you want them to become is how you'll treat them. So if you want to you recognizing their limits and their growth and their maturity, but the destination you're trying to draw them into, and all the different aspects of their life, right? They're financially, psychologically, spiritually. You want them to aspire and recognize that adulthood, maturity, is the end game, is the goal for them. So excuse me, raise them as adults. That's the vision you want to put for their life, and so that they also recognize that living as an adult, if I can put it that way, as a mature person in the world, which involves sacrifice, which involves service, which involves love and stepping up. Actually, it's there's a tremendous amount of freedom and joy that comes with that kind of character in your life. So to be a child is to be dependent, and to be an adult is to be interdependent, to be able to bring others along, give of yourself to them, self gift, um, and to help them to become who they're really called and meant to be. So, yeah, I don't know, to your question, how did we get here? I think it's because our culture has a really difficult time, especially outside of the Christian lens, in our secular culture, knowing how to handle suffering. So we're constantly trying to get rid of suffering or remove suffering or you know um, alleviate suffering, but we approach it with things like materialism or other even technology that helps us sort of become numb to suffering versus entering into it and finding meaning in your suffering. And also, for Christians especially, we have the gift of being able to join our suffering to our model in the person of Jesus Christ, who ultimately suffered but then rose from the dead.
Well, and you're leading young people to that by example. And one of the things you've got happening here in the next 2 weeks, you're going to Rome, where you're going
Yeah.
to try and evangelize. Is it evangelize? Is it catechize? Is it invite? Or you're showing these young people how to connect with other people to talk about Jesus Christ? Is that what I'm right?
Yeah, so like as you described it, like at the end of July is an event happening in Rome called the Youth Jubilee, or the Jubilee of Youth. this year, the year of this Jubilee year, a Jubilee year of hope, Pilgrims of Hope, which is the theme. There's a whole bunch of different gatherings in Rome for different groups of people, and the one for young people is happening at the end of July, which is kind of a mini World Youth Day, you might call it. They're thinking maybe 1 million, young adults, 18 to 30, will come to Rome from all over the world. And so, in our charism, CCO as a movement has a great love for evangelizing and witnessing and helping young adults, young people, to grow deeper in their relationship with Jesus. One of those ways that's been especially close to our heart is through the lives of the saints, especially young saints. So we are helping with a number of partners to organize a project called theyoungsaints.com, which is exactly that. There's a website, theyoungsaints.com, which is a pilgrimage in Rome, a walking pilgrimage inside Rome, where they can go to different churches where they can encounter and learn about the young saints. And, speaking about young men, the two key patrons that we have for this pilgrimage are Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati and Blessed Carlo Acutis, both of whom are going to be canonized on September 7th in the same year. And so we have centers that are dedicated to these young men. Actually, CCO is coordinating the Blessed Carlo Center completely, where young people can come learn about their lives, but also our CCO team will be there to meet them, talk with them, share faith with them, pray with them. And what we find is that so many young people that do come to these kinds of events, like a World Youth Day, they come looking for deeper meaning in their life and spiritual connection. I mean, that's why they're taking time and going. And many times it can be actually a first introduction to the reality that they could live with Jesus Christ at the center of their lives. So we've got lots of different, everything from street outreach and evangelization, conversational ministry, to Eucharistic adoration events happening at the Blessed Carlo Center and other places, testimonies, young people sharing and witnessing and speaking about their relationship with God and how that impacts their life. So lots of dynamic things happening over that week in Rome. It's we're really excited.
Well, and you talk about testimonies because it's hard to argue with a testimony, rather
Mm,
than you guys worship Mary. Well, this is what has happened in my life due to me searching for God. And it's extremely hard to argue with that because it's your life. And
yeah.
that's where it's important for men to start looking at what is your testimony that you share with people. And we call it the elevator pitch or whatever. Like, why should
Yeah.
somebody come come to Jesus, and what has Jesus done in your life? So I challenge the men watching this episode
Hmm.
to examine what that is. And that's part of the training that we're putting together for the Heroic Launch programs, because we
Hmm.
want to train up leaders just like you're training up leaders with CCO. We want to train up men, and they can go to our website and find more about uh, the Heroic Launch program on heroicmen.org and soon to be .ca.
Oh,
We're
that's great.
moving on up to the north. And
Right.
that's where it's
Excellent.
really exciting to feature people like yourself. We've got so many great voices in Canada that aren't, a lot of people aren't aware of the gifts we have within the church in Canada, like yourself and Andre and Gel. And so that's where I'm really excited about that. And of course, Bishop Scott.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
it,
that's fantastic, Sean, because I'm so glad to hear that, these resources are being made available in the Canadian context. We would totally agree with you that one of the most um, impactful tools that all of us have or should have, can have, is a clear and compelling testimony of how God has been working in our lives and how we are living in relationship with Him. And so that's awesome that you've got those tools coming to bear. It's something we do with students and young people in parishes as well, is help teach and train them to be able to give that testimony in that, you said, like the elevator pitch, or if you were with someone and they only had a few minutes before they were gone, they said, well, tell me, like, why is faith important to you? What would you say? And so to have that kind of articulated and prepared, it's just such a natural thing that we can then share with others. And it is so invitational because, we live in a social world, and so much of what we do is influenced by, what we hear from others, because we really see people's experience as being incredibly true and credible in our lives. So that's awesome. And also on the Canadian front, bringing more conversation and opportunity to how God is working, especially in Catholic men's ministry in Canada. I'm just so glad to hear that those things are emerging.
Well, and you have a resource that you freely share. It's a little book to help people with that conversation. Can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So we've created, well, many years ago, just the backstory to it is that, in our work, with young people, and also, on campuses, we create tools and resources to help in a clear and simple way communicate and share faith with others. And the big challenge we experienced, decades ago, was how do you help train someone to share their faith? Because the biggest obstacle people say is, well, I want to share my faith, but I just don't know how. So we created a booklet called The Ultimate Relationship. And it's a presentation of the Kerygma, of the gospel message, the realities of Jesus in our lives, the relationship with Jesus. And this little booklet is a tool that equips uh, people anywhere, actually, to share that in a simple and clear way. So we used it to help train students, young adults, but we found that actually globally there was a great desire and need for this tool for the whole church. So it's been translated into numerous languages. We've given it out at World Youth Days. It's available for free on an app. So if you go to cco.ca/the UR, or /UR, I should say, exactly, you've got it right there,
Yep, I got the
cco.ca/UR,
app myself.
then you can order physical copies there. You can download the app onto your phone, which is free, multi-language, and it's a tool to help you to be more confident in clearly sharing your faith with others.
That's awesome. And that's where there's so many resources today, phone a friend network. So no man should feel like he can't do this. It's hard because we've been conditioned that you don't talk about faith in mixed company and stuff like that. But once again, back to your previous thing about how young men especially like challenges, this is a great
Mm.
challenge for them to get outside of their comfort zone and start talking to people about Jesus. And that's your goal. The whole goal of Global 2033 is that we, luckily you and I only have Canada to worry about, so
Well, I think as baptized Catholics, our baptism calls us to have a heart for the whole world, right?
yeah.
So we do have a special, I think, uh, responsibility, patriotically in this country, that where we were, where we live and where God has called us to be. But also as Canadians, we, I think, have a great capacity to help reach the world and serve the world. We see it in our history, and I think it's a part of our destiny as Canadians are to be great missionaries to the world.
And a lot of our friends maybe don't know, but you talked about saints. We've got Saint Joseph as our patron saint. He has been
Yeah.
for he's in his 401st year of service to Canada, and and we here at God Squad have had commissioned the Litany of Saint Joseph, which we're hoping to have ready to share on August 15th, the Assumption
Yeah.
with the world, and it's just another tool, as you will. But if you turn to Saint Joseph, he will not let you down. I can guarantee that. Uh,
Yeah.
Terror of demons. Who wouldn't want that for backup?
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think, there's this, I think we've talked about this before too, Sean, right? Like at the Oratory of St. Joseph in Montreal, they have these wonderful um, artistic renderings of the titles of St. Joseph, one of those being Terror of Demons. And they really are a model for us as Catholic men of that high standard that we're invited to, that we want to call young men and others to, defender of the church, terror of demons, like it's, like comforter of the sick, like these are qualities that as men here in Canada, especially, with Saint Joseph as our patron for this country, that we should live up to and seek to follow in his example and show others and call other men to that example.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we're going to be out at St. Joseph's Oratory with the hope of presenting the oratory with a copy of the score of the Litany of St. Joseph, which was performed here in Calgary, and the video as well. In August with our good friend Bishop Scott on the motorcycles.
That's great.
It's
Yeah.
And so we're quite excited about that. So if you would like us to carry your prayers on the Heroic Brotherhood, we have a prayer part in there, or prayer at godsquad.ca. Send us your prayers. We're going to be visiting 5 out of the 6 national shrines here in Canada on the motorcycle ride, and you're going to Rome, where is the epicenter
Yep.
for the Jubilee year. We're going to hit the Canadian national
Awesome.
shrines here, and be praying for you and for young men and, well, everyone that asks us to pray, and hopefully we can evangelize a few along the way as well.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for that for that invitation and for undertaking that pilgrimage to those shrines. It's excellent.
So, Jeff, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to visit us here on the Heroic Hotline. I pray that you continue the work that you've been called to do. It's so good to see what God has done here with CCO, reaching so many young people. I know you've got a base here in Calgary, and I can't help but think that it's been one of the game changers for our diocese as it continues to grow and invite others to follow Christ.
Yeah, no, it's been wonderful. It's always great to chat with you and to collaborate together. And if people are looking for some of those resources or information on CCO, it's cco.ca is our website, and the website for the Global 2033 initiative, which is a gathering of many Catholic groups, dioceses, leaders all across the globe. Even I know that Heroic Men here has been involved with that. It's global2033.org. So there's information about this kind of movement towards the 2000th anniversary of the resurrection of Jesus in 2033. So, yeah, feel free to check out those sites and keep us in prayer.
Thanks again. Have a great day and a safe trip to Rome.
Thank you. I'll be praying for you as well there, and all of your connectors, all the people involved in the heroic brotherhood.
Thanks.